He, that is Smerdyakov, met Ivan with a slow, silent gaze and was apparently not at all surprised at his coming. There was a great change in his face. He was much thinner and more sallow. His eyes were sunken. There were blue marks under them. He's back sick and wasting away again because he's feeling repudiated. He's very ill, it turns out. And what Martha says about him on 587 is he's not himself. That's the middle of 587. Smerdyakov was very ill. It's not that he's laid up, but he doesn't seem himself. Well, that's sort of one of those Dostoevsky little tricks. Remember, and it's important for you to remember, that he hasn't got a self. If a self means the two factors, both a dark side and a light side, or an earthy side and a heavenly side, he's got no self at all. And that's what, remember, Gregory says that to him. That was his negative childhood memory. You are not a human being. You grew from the mold in the bathhouse. That's all sort of, you're being reminded of that. That he doesn't seem himself. But that's not important yet. It's just sort of put on hold. He's lost his ability to live. He's lost his ability to act. Since he has no self, and he gets all of what motives he has from Ivan, and now he hates Ivan, since Ivan has not congratulated him but repudiated him, his deed, and so that's the situation. And Ivan really doesn't know. I think it's again so murky. Ivan suspects that Smerdyakov did it, but he does, and he knows that Dmitri didn't do it. But it's really not absolutely clear who did it until this minute, and then finally Smerdyakov just announces that he did it, and that settles that. And he says he did it because Ivan wanted him to. And that's on page 589. Finally, it all gets sorted out. The middle of 589. You are the murderer? He says this is Smerdyakov talking to Ivan. You murdered him. You are the murderer. I was only your instrument, your faithful servant. It was following your words that I did it. That's the sort of, you hired me as a hitman line. That's how Smerdyakov understands it. Did it? Did you murder him? That's the first time Ivan has fully realized it. Up to now, he's just dimly thought about it. He thought about it enough to want to kill Smerdyakov, but still. Did you murder him? Ivan turned cold. Something seemed to give way in his brain, and he shuddered all over. Notice, and another translation says with a cold shiver. All that is the coldness that is associated with the devil and with the people who betray and kill people close to them. Smerdyakov looked at him wonderingly. The genuineness of Ivan's horror struck him. You don't mean to say you really didn't know? Smerdyakov faltered mistrustfully, looking with a forced smile into Ivan's eyes. Ivan gazed at him, unable to speak, and here's the evidence about why the peasant song upset him so much. Ach, Vanka's gone to Petersburg, I won't wait till he comes back. Suddenly echoed in his head. Yes, that's right. That line now means what it meant to Ivan all along, that Vanka, that is, means Ivan, that's his nickname, has gone off to Moscow, Petersburg, it doesn't matter. And Smerdyakov isn't going to wait till he comes back. He's going to kill Fyodor right away. Because, this is the crucial thing, he thought Ivan wanted him to do it. He has no motives of his own. The middle of 290. Did you really not know till now? Smerdyakov asked once more. No, I did not know. I kept thinking of Dmitri. He clutched his head in both hands. Listen, did you kill him alone, with my brother's help, or without? It was only with your help, I killed him. Dmitri is innocent. All right, talking about it later. Why do I keep trembling? You were bold enough, this is Smerdyakov. Then you said, everything is lawful, and how frightened you are now. Smerdyakov muttered in surprise. And that's how Ivan caused it. In effect, he said to Smerdyakov, murder is okay. Because this is Ivan's view. God is dead and all things are possible. And since Smerdyakov gets all his belief from Ivan, he then just gets the belief the murder is okay. So that's the sense in which he not only wanted him to do it, but gave him, so to speak, the license to do it. And then, let me see, I just want to get to the crucial line. So Ivan's the real murderer. It's first-degree murder, and at least so it seems. Again, he's repeating it, Smerdyakov on 292, about two-thirds down. No, he didn't kill him, that is Dmitri. But I don't want to lie to you, because if you really haven't understood and are not pretending so as to throw your guilt on me, you are still responsible for it all. Since you suspected murder and wanted me to do it and went away knowing all about it, so I want to prove to you that you were the only real murderer. I'm not the murderer, though I did kill him. You were the real murderer. And so Ivan is cracking up. Why? Why am I the murderer? Oh, God, cried Ivan, unable to restrain himself, and so forth and so forth. Now, that does it. I mean, Ivan, we now understand. He understands. But there's now a new murky element that's fascinating in the middle of 593. And since you've been very good at getting the last one, let's see if you can help with this one. The very middle. Was I so eager then? Was I? Ivan cried. To be sure you were. This is the crucial part. By your consent, you silently sanctioned my doing it. Smerdyakov looked steadily at Ivan. He was very weak, totally unplugged, and spoke slowly and warily that some inner force urged him on. He evidently had some design. Ivan felt that. Now, I don't know if any of you know yet. I mean, you have to read it more than once. What design Smerdyakov had? Do you know what Smerdyakov is up to? Why does he have any design? He has lost all of his will to live and all of his motives by getting disconnected. Well, that's very subtle. So we won't, and I'm not ready quite to make the problem as clear as it has to be. It takes a while. So let's see where we are. I just wrote again here, but it's worth reading again. In a certain way, Ivan did hire Smerdyakov to do it, but in another sense, he didn't. He would never commit a murder, horrified by it. So Alyosha's right. Ivan's not the kind of person who would kill old Karamazov, and he hasn't killed old Karamazov. But Smerdyakov is right, too. It's exactly the way Ivan behaved with Smerdyakov that is solely responsible in the finalist responsibility. Everybody's got some responsibility, but the most responsibility is that Ivan gave to Smerdyakov the permission to do it and made it clear that he wanted him to do it. So the moral is that we're responsible not only for a lot more good than we normally realize, but we're responsible for causing a lot more evil than we normally realize. That's the theme that comes up every once in a while, and coming up again now. And now comes the next strange event. This is the one that you now need to explain. So Smerdyakov gets weaker and weaker. And he has some design. He's lost his will to live, and he won't live for long. And yet, and this is the peculiar part, he commits suicide. That's the puzzle. Why doesn't he just waste away? Or, that is, in The Possessed, which probably none of you have read, the main character, who is also very evil and has no real motivations of his own, dies of kind of lack of the energy to do anything, really sort of wastes away. And if Smerdyakov had just waited a little while, he surely would have died, unplugged from Ivan. But he doesn't wait a little while. He goes in and commits what critics have thought is an act of guilt and repentance. Now, surely that's wrong. But Dostoevsky is playing this strange game with people. I mean, it's as if he wants to mislead the stupid critics because he's got this book lying on the table at the bottom of 590 that Smerdyakov been reading, the sayings of the Holy Father Isaac the Syrian, and the money is hidden under there. But why is he reading it? Well, I'm not sure I know, but if you go back and look at the writings of Ivan the Syrian, which I did, is it Ivan? Is that his name? What's his first name? No, I forgot. Isaac. Yeah, that didn't sound right. Isaac the Syrian. You discover that he's a Father Therapon. He's very gloomy, and he thinks that the best thing people can do is live alone in the desert and eat roots and be silent and so forth. So presumably, Smerdyakov is reading it because it's gloomy, not because he's become suddenly converted to some dark form of Christianity. But it just makes it harder for the critics who don't understand the suicide. But then you can see why people would be tempted to say that Smerdyakov must feel guilty and see that he, in a sense, had misunderstood Ivan and was really he that was responsible. This is the story the critics tell themselves, and therefore he's punishing himself and hung himself, and this is all nonsense. But then you need a right answer. Why did he hang himself? And why did he leave this note, which is very interesting in what it doesn't say? Where do we have to find the note? 619 maybe? Well, 619 is important, but it's not the quote I want. 593. We got to find the suicide. If anybody finds it, just yell. Where do we hear about it? At the trial? I'm completely puzzled. Well, who knows? Nobody's been. Yet I've got it written down. Well, let's put it aside for a minute. It'll probably show up. Anyway, Smerdyakov does leave a suicide note saying nothing. Saying, in effect, I just killed myself and I'm not putting the blame on anyone. And as one of the prosecutors says, if he was feeling guilty for the murder and wanted to assume responsibility for the murder, then he certainly would have said so. He would have said, I did it and I feel bad about it and I'm killing myself. And he didn't. So we just have to keep open what's going on. And I think you can see on 619, Alyosha understanding what's going on. Well, do you understand what's going on? Well, why? What's this strange design that Smerdyakov had that is carried out, presumably, by him killing himself? And why is this? Yeah. Save him.
You know, God is going to next from God is going to
You got the right facts, but you got the wrong conclusion. If Smerdyakov kills himself, no one will believe Ivan's claim that he's guilty, that he put Smerdyakov up to it, that Smerdyakov really did it. There'll be no evidence, right? You're absolutely right. And Ivan can't be sent to Siberia, even if he confesses. Right. This is what Alyosha says, and you're on the right track, but you got it switched off at one point. The middle of 619, Alyosha says in his prayer, yes, if Smerdyakov is dead, no one will believe Ivan's evidence. Now, assuming that Smerdyakov wants to hurt Ivan, because he really hates Ivan now, and we'll see that it'll go back to the third interview. Ivan is now the god that failed, so to speak. He's the center of Smerdyakov's life, and he won't play that role. So take my word for it. If he hates Ivan, why would it be a good thing to do just what you thought? Make it impossible for Ivan to confess and go to prison.
is.
That's good. That's half of it. I think that's right. And if you can spin it another way too, which is not against that. Yes, I think it's right that Ivan wants to be approved of and to confess it and show that he's better than everybody and that he admits he wants to kill his father and he admits he did it and now nobody was going to believe him. But the other half of the story is, think of how Ivan will feel the rest of his life if Dmitri is in Siberia for having committed a crime that now Ivan feels he's the one who did it. And so Smerdyakov is putting him in this amazingly awful position by killing himself. That seems to be the strange design. Unless anybody's got a better idea, I go with that one. Yeah.
But it's next to the tied to
The mysterious visitor, like he's connecting it, right. That's right. It's like being in the hell of isolation. Of course, the mysterious visitor, nobody believed him either. It's rather complicated. That he had really become a good man, so that though they didn't believe that he'd committed the murder because they thought he was such a good person all along, that at least he could now relate to them in a way that was honest from his side and not wrong from their side. So bringing in the mysterious visitor probably doesn't help much. But go ahead. Yeah.
Joy, even though in serious things no one believed him, he was able to something of joy.
That's good. That's very good. That's right. So there are two levels to what you said. One level is, Ivan is already an example of the bad kind of crucifixion, the laceration kind, the kind that sort of wallows in its own suffering out of pride. But now, if Smerdyakov kills himself, then Ivan is sort of stuck in that kind of suffering forever. He can't confess and become like the mysterious visitor, get people to forgive him and be willing to take on and so forth. He's just he's stuck in this wrong kind of confession, which can't, I'm just trying to say it as best I can lead to expiation and thereby joy and reconciliation. Because he could only expiate the crime if people believed he committed it and sent him to Siberia, which they don't, and won't, and didn't. So Smerdyakov got what he wanted by committing suicide and leaving this note. He could have also not committed suicide, it just occurs to me. He could have just kept quiet and not said anything. So it's a combination of committing suicide and as the most sort of efficient way of not being bothered and not saying anything, and anyway not having any reason to go on living, and at the same time putting Ivan into a sort of hell, a hell of isolation, in which he is guilty of a crime and can't relate to anybody because nobody believed him. You want to say something about it? Then she wants to say something. Yeah. Oh, the suicide note, thank you, is on 272. Let me write that down for next time I do this. I won't be stuck there. What is it again? 672. Okay, it says, yeah, there it is. This sort of minimal note here, 72, where he says, I destroy myself of my own will and inclination so as to throw no blame on anybody. And then the prosecutor says what I think is important to say. What would it have cost him to add, I am the murderer, not Dmitry Karamazov? But that he did not add. So the idea is nobody could believe that Smerdyakov was the killer. Yeah.
By not by saying like to show themselves and also that
Well, that's interesting. Let's stop with what she's saying for a minute before we go to you, because she's raising. I mean, what in the world motivates Smershikov to do it, since he has no motivations outside of Ivan? I had this. Oh, I don't think that. I don't know the answer to that really. I may be just a kind of glitch in the book. But if there's any kind of answer, it's something like he's motivated simply by the negative kind of motivation that he's disconnected from Ivan and he wants to revenge that. That's not a new motivation, it's not a positive motivation. You all have things to say about that. Okay, before, the first hand I saw was over here somewhere. Oh, well, I guess you have next. I did put you on hold. Go ahead.
Like Ivan and it's kind of like he's guilty, but he's not guilty. Like he's so it's kind of like this weird parallel that like that outside people do, like yes, like it's
You're right. There's this funny parallel. You're not drawing any sort of existential conclusions. No, neither am I. Good. It's just a kind of funny symmetry. Got you. Before you, somebody else had a hand up over here, which I have now lost. Who? Yeah, go ahead. That's right. That's good. Well, I see, but I don't agree, I think, quite. I mean, he does try to get Ivan to kill him, and he doesn't, won't. We'll read about that in a minute. But he doesn't have to kill himself. He'll die anyway. He's not himself. He's sick. He's weak and falling apart. And the idea that he does kill himself is some strange design, remember? And we're given that hint that he's really upset with Ivan, and he's so upset with Ivan that he's got some weird plan. I read you that sentence. And that seems to be something more than just inevitable suicide. Yeah.
doesn't have a self. How is it that he has?
Well, he doesn't have much emotions, does he? I mean, he's except this emotion. I guess it's a funny emotion. As she says, he's a parasite. He's been disconnected from the host. He's got this kind of desperate first attempt to hold on to Ivan, and then desperate anger at Ivan. Why does he have that? Well, when you say he doesn't have a self, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have consciousness and maybe even emotions, of sorts. He just doesn't have a dark side and a bright side, and that's sure. I mean, the mainly emotions he has are nasty emotions like putting pins in the meat for the dogs and killing the cats and so forth. But those are, whatever they are, they're not human emotions. I think the argument's supposed to be, yeah. Then I think, I think I did this in the wrong order, and I don't mind, but I think before we discuss it, we should look at a few passages in the third interview, which I jumped over because I got off on that. What is the strange design? And so let's go back to 593. Let me get back to where I want to be. Not there. 593. Okay, that's the strange design. So now here we go. All of this now has got to do for a little while with how does Smershikov relate to Ivan after this has all become clear. And that starts on 597. And the first thing is this evidence that without Ivan, Smershikov has no desires of importance. because Smerdyakov lifted the book off the notes, the bank notes, and laid them to the side. Take that money with you, Smerdyakov said. Of course I'll take it. But why do you give it to me? If you committed the murder for the sake of it. Ivan looked at him with great surprise. I don't want it, Smerdyakov said in a shaking voice. I did have an idea of beginning a new life with that money in Moscow, or better still, abroad. I did dream of it, chiefly because all things are lawful. So now Smerdyakov has lost that motive, because that was if the crime was not really a crime, and so that taking the money was something Ivan approved of and wanted him to do, and murder and so forth. Then he had, again, a kind of parasitical desire, because Ivan says way early on in the book, I want to go to Europe, and so forth. So he wants to go to Europe and live abroad. And then now comes this funny conversation. Let's read more. That was right what you taught me, for you talked a lot to me about that. For if there's no everlasting God, there's no such thing as virtue, and there's no need of it. You were right, for that's how I looked at it. Did you come to that conclusion by yourself? Asked Ivan with a smile. With you or hell? And now I suppose you believe in God, since you are giving back the money. This is what these critics who care about that sayings of Isaac the Syrian should notice. No, I don't believe in God, whispered Smerdyakov. That's why I'm giving it back. Now, why is that? Well, because I think Ivan is his God. And now Ivan has repudiated him. He has no reason to go. No, he can't go to Europe anymore. He doesn't want anything anymore. Now, I guess. No, I don't believe in God, whispers Smerdyakov. Then why are you giving it back? And I think the answer would be, because you were my God and you repudiated me. But he just says, stop, that's enough. Smerdyakov waved his hand. You used to say that everything is lawful, and now you're so upset. And, okay, that's the beginning of why he's so upset at Ivan. He's carried out Ivan's wishes as he understood them, and rightly understood them. And now he followed Ivan's philosophy as he understood it, and rightly understood it. So he ought to be thanked and congratulated and take the money and go off to France. But then, but Smerdyakov has lost everything. He lost his God, lost his motives. So now he wants to die on 590. There's nothing to live for anymore. And he says at the top of 598, well, kill me now, Smerdyakov said all at once, looking strangely at Ivan. You won't even dare do that, he said with a bitter smile. You won't dare do anything, you who used to be so bold. Okay, so that's his final angry thing. So, since Ivan won't kill him, he kills himself, but he does it so that he can get revenge on Ivan. I mean, that must be the strange design. At least that's how I'm reading it, but I'm not sure. Then comes the suicide, where he doesn't take the blame. He doesn't do it out of guilt. And so the idea is, I gather, he's so angry at Ivan, if angry is the right thing, I guess you can have that emotion. He's so angry at Ivan for having repudiated him. You see, for giving him the motive to do it, giving him the right to do it, making it look like that Ivan, who is kind of his God, will be so pleased if he does it, and then Ivan recoils in horror, says he didn't want him to do it. He seems to repudiate his philosophy that all things are lawful, and leaves Smerdyakov nowhere. And so that's why I said like a God that failed. The God that asked him to do all these things turns out not to support him and not really to want him to do all these things. Yeah. Well, that is a problem. How do you deal with it? Yeah. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, it's right here somewhere. But anyway, that's right. Oh, no, I did it. Nobody to blame but myself. Yeah.
Now, so the only part of him that's left is part of his desire. Because he's too, what else do I wish life? The only one to blame. All it is the part of it. There's only one thing.
Okay. the only problem with that is that it doesn't explain the strange design that he seems to have. And it doesn't fit with Alyosha's prayer that says, now that Smerdyakov has killed himself, no one will believe Ivan. So, I stick to my reading, though I'm open to things like what you just said. Some ingenious better reading may still be lurking around the corner. Yeah. When you reach 30. Yeah. And he's, but I don't know if Smerdyakov knows it. And again, remember, you guys are coming up with ingenious things, but there is the phrase that he's got some strange design, and it isn't a design to imitate, well, it could be, imitate Ivan, what Ivan is going to do at 30, only do it early. How old are they now? About 24 or something, I think. I'm not convinced. Yeah.
And one of the things you got from computers that something, and like figure out that like lots of these problems that got so that's what it is. And it's so just but I guess it's over that all this that like kids that start.
It wasn't that I didn't understand you. I couldn't hear you. Talk louder. I don't know. Did you all hear her? Yes. Well, either you talk louder or somebody will have to repeat it. So say it again. Loud. But here and there, but I can't tell you which, so say it again. Okay, now, so Smerdyakov, I say this for the pod people anyway. It's okay, justice with, you think that it's justice with no mercy, Smerdyakov. Okay. You got Ivan was his God and what? His Christ figure. Whoa. Why?
But when he's gone himself and his
his Savior has rejected him. Well, now that I've heard you, I don't believe you. Okay. That's just, when you start putting Smerdyakov in the place of Jesus Ivan in the place of Jesus as somebody who should be saving Smerdyakov, it isn't. That is who think Smerdyakov is thinking.
But Ivan, it's similar.
Well, I just disagree. I think nothing could possibly save Smerdyakov. Two things. One, he doesn't even want to be saved, except, given, maybe this is what you mean, he could save him by giving him motives and keeping him attached to things by imitating Ivan. That's what he did for him. And that is the sense in which he saved him. I'm sort of getting on into what you're saying. And so at the gate, for instance, he's saying, in effect, I'm going to do whatever you want me to do. I have no desires of my own, but as long as you're telling me what to do, I'm happy to do it. That's, in a sense, the way Ivan is his savior and is saving him. And then Ivan stops telling him what to do. Says, I didn't want you to do that. I'm horrified at what you've done. I don't, and then his savior has abandoned him, and he's upset. But more than upset, and we're just back to that again, he's got this plan. Now, how he can even be feeling a need for revenge, I don't know, except by saying it's not any positive motive that, like, anything that he wants to go after, like cooking or Paris or money, or not men or women, but it might have been. No motives at all, just the motive to get revenge on Ivan for not giving him any motives. That's peculiar, and I don't know what to do about it. Yeah.
But the book, I think this area was regularly by finding like in that, and actually synthesized getting a bond that always have silence and like sort of something first later or whatever, but also in a way holding to a part of that.
Doing what again? I could. Holding him apart from this circle life. Yeah. Well, Okay, well, you added one important, interesting element, but I don't quite know what to do with it. But I think you're right. It's something to think about. It's interesting you remember that. Yes, Gregory read that book. That's where Smershikov got it. And it's this dark book that Gregory read when he was in the dark mood, when their child died. And Smershikov has been reading it, and he put the money on it. But I don't know how to make anything more of that. And if you do, you come and talk to me.
That's my child. That's even worse than it all failed.
That, well, that's all right. It's something. But maybe. I don't know. Your last comment. You have your hand up?
Smershikov does have self. Then how does he have a great understanding about how not being able to love and rather being inside here?
That's easy. The first one I don't know about not being able to love. But he asked how is he going? How does he see? Because that's the mysterious visitor stuff applied to Ivan, and that's getting too tenuous. But that he does understand. He's smart, Smershikov. He understands that Ivan believes in justice. I'm sure he's heard Ivan talk about that. Maybe the story about, that he has to commit suicide because the world is a place where no just individual would want to live and so forth. At least, he wouldn't understand it, in the sense of directly understanding it, believing it, but he would accept it because it's Ivan's view, and he knows, I suppose, that it's Ivan's view. That remember the phrase in that discussion, Ivan says to Alyosha, I must have justice or I'll kill myself. Now, Smershikov could hear that and understand that, though he couldn't understand it in the sense of understanding how anybody would want to do that or care about that, because he doesn't understand how anybody would want to do anything or care about anything. But he could see that it would make Ivan miserable to have Dmitri in prison and Ivan running around in the world. I don't think we should spend longer on it, but if you have more to say about it, come and see me in office hours or write your paper. But I told you there are the loose ends, and that's one of the strange ones. I think you can understand more about why I'm making such a fuss about this if I go a little further. Let me see now. What I want to talk about is one more thing we have time for today anyway. The very basic Dostoevsky idea that nobody can commit a crime and just feel okay about it, get away with it. And notice that Ivan, in spite of his saying, for God all things are possible, when it actually comes down to killing his father, even in the second hand, hiring somebody else to do it way, can't stand the idea that he did it. And those of you who read Crime and Punishment, a lot of you know that Raskolnikov, who thinks he's above ethics because he's a superior person and kills the pawnbroker, can't get away with it. He finally has to go to prison. And Dostoevsky would have loved a case that happened in California, or maybe, I don't know if you remember it or not. How old were you when the guy, I don't remember his name, killed Moscone? Any of you remember that? I mean, someone would buy something white, may have been his name, a former policeman. Remember the went to City Hall and shot the mayor? Yes, with the Twinkie defense. What's the guy's name? I don't remember. That was White. What White? Dan White. Dan White just walked into City Hall and shot the mayor, Moscone. That's why the Moscone Center is named after him. And got away with it. Got a very light sentence on this crazy defense that he had eaten too many Twinkies and he wasn't in his right mind. That's why it's called the Twinkie defense. And everybody was outraged, but he got off. And 2 years later, he committed suicide. Very Dostoevsky sort of thing. Obviously, he couldn't live with himself and his neighbors in the world once he knew that he was the cold-blooded murderer of the mayor. So anyway, but Dostoevsky has a big general view and it's sort of like this. You could put it into kind of philosophical terms. It's a kind of proof of the existence of God. That is, if it's a kind of syllogism. If and only if God is dead, would all things be possible, or all things be lawful. But all things aren't lawful. Nobody can get away with murder and not be caught in the web of connectedness and finally suffer for it or have to kill themselves, be in the hands of a living God. So the universe is so set up that you can't break the chain of connectedness with impunity and just get away with it. And the chain of connectedness is God, remember, that whole prayer of Alyosha's, that God is catching up with Ivan who thought that he could just wash his hands of everything and leave the world at 30, or leave the town and go to Moscow, and because he isn't involved, that everybody is involved, and if you break the involvement, then you will suffer for it. That's the prayer, remember, the important prayer on 619. I'm just mentioning it, but I'll show you. Remember that God, in whom Ivan disbelieved, and his truth were gaining mastery over his heart, and he refused to submit. That means God is the connectedness. That's the truth. Nobody can break the connectedness and get away with it. That would prove that there was a God. That would prove that there was connectedness. If it was true that everybody who was a human being no one could commit the crime and get away with it. The most damaging thing you could do is make a movie like Woody Allen's Crimes and Misdemeanors, which I keep talking about. Get it on DVD and watch it. I mean, this guy actually takes back Dostoevsky. I'm sure that's what Woody Allen had in mind. He hires a hitman, gets his mistress murdered, begins to feel that he has to confess, practically breaks down and goes to the police to confess, just like Raskolnikov, and then decides, well, why should I confess? Nobody knows. And he doesn't, and he lives happily ever after. Now, that is exactly what Dostoevsky thinks is impossible. That would show that God is dead. I mean, if you could do that. And maybe you can. I mean, I think Woody Allen has got an interesting point there. He makes this very plausible. I mean, it's a question of whether you can make such a life plausible. Dan White is on Dostoevsky's side. He commits suicide, but the guy, the hero of the guy in Crimes and Misdemeanors, is on the other side. Yeah. No, I gather it's a similar story. I got to see Match Point because yes, how many have seen Match Point? A lot of you. Well, I've got to connect up. Or you want to tell me, is it just like the story I told? Very similar. So Dostoevsky, Woody Allen and Dostoevsky are on a head-on collision, and he's doing it twice, taking on this thing. But it looks like that. But then, so much for that. And now the question is, I want to come back to for a minute to what we've just been talking about before. But Dostoevsky's got a problem. How does anybody ever commit a murder and get away with it? How could they? And the answer is, one answer would be that they haven't got any self. That the only person who could commit a murder with impunity would be somebody who had no understanding of the connectedness whatsoever and was acting on somebody else's orders because he was a kind of totally parasitical on them. In other words, Smerzhikov. Smerzhikov, he can commit a murder. And he doesn't have to commit suicide because he committed the murder. He commits suicide for an entirely different reason, because he's lost touch with Ivan. But I think Dostoevsky has to set it up so that nobody commits a murder in any Dostoevsky book and gets away with it. But there are killings in Dostoevsky books, and they're always based on misunderstanding, like this one. In The Possessed, lots of people get killed because they totally misunderstand the Smerzhikov-like character who's at the center of the Possessed. And in the end, and that person isn't even a person, and they're a kind of vacuum. They end up wasting away. So anyway, this is a kind of Dostoevsky picture. You can either believe it or not, but I mean, it's surely something Dostoevsky believes. So now, I just want to look at okay, I've done that. I'm just seeing where I am. Okay. Somebody, did I see a hand? Well, we got 10 minutes. I'm going on. There's plenty we should talk about. So where are we? Oh yeah, I owe you an explanation. I just found it and I needed to tell you at some point. Now it looks like we don't know whether Ivan is going to live or die. Let's just do that before time is done. I've got to find it. Okay, so Ivan's position is unlivable, and where now? I don't even know where is Ivan at the trial. Oh, I read that already, didn't I? Where he asks for water and he looks like he's dying. Okay, so we got that. But I didn't find. Now I remember. I said that someplace we have evidence. This is not a deep existential point. This is just something that I promised that I could use this time to do. The promise was that we know that Ivan is going to live, and that means that somehow, we don't know how, he's going to have to suffer for his crime and expiate it and get back in touch with people in spite of the fact that Mereshkov committed suicide. Maybe that's connected to the mysterious visitor, it occurred to me. They don't have to believe Ivan as long as Ivan has suffered and become a good person. So Smerdyakov doesn't get away with this trick, if that's what he's pulling, that Ivan is now stuck for the rest of his life, knowing that he's a murderer and knowing that he can't tell anybody because they won't believe him. Somehow, somebody, probably Alyosha, gets Ivan to suffer the right way. All we know is the following, that when he goes and stands on the stairs, remember I read today because it comes back at the end of the book as the most disgusting thing he ever did in his life. But the first time it happens, really happens, is on 267. So, remembering the night long afterwards, Ivan recalled with peculiar repulsion how he had got up and gone out, listened to his father stirring around. Now, skipping down about a third. That action, all his life afterwards, he called infamous. And at the bottom of his heart, he thought that it was the basest action of his life. Then that's it. So all his life afterward, and that he understood it as base. That action was his total detached listening to his father. And he felt no hatred for his father, but simple curiosity to know why he was walking around down there below and what he was doing. Now, once you know that later, you know that Ivan also knew that thanks to Smerdyakov and Dmitri, as he thought about it then, this was his last night, because Ivan was just on his way to Moscow. Smerdyakov was going to sham a fit. Dmitri was going to kill him. So Ivan was listening like a detached spectator, like an eyewitness outside the world to old Karamazov, completely indifferent to whether he's going to be killed or not. And that is the worst thing he ever did. And somehow or other, he suffers for it. I don't know how. Because all his life long, though he had a long life, presumably, he remembers it. Rightly, he remembers it as the most disgusting thing he ever did. Namely, what? Not accept the connectedness. He's just related to old Karamazov like a curious bystander related to an interesting incident. And that's what he has to suffer for. And realize you can't do that. You've got to accept the connectedness. Okay, now maybe I should stop. I have to look and see if we should go on to the next. Yeah. Okay, what we got for next time, and now you should definitely read it because it's just terribly important. Now it's not important anymore for who did it, but it's absolutely crucial for every important question that's left open. Let me just tell you that, and then you can go. Remember that there are several unopened questions, unanswered questions. We don't understand what it is to found a church. The whole issue of community, left over from the Grand Inquisitor, is still open. We don't know whether the church should be one individual in isolation or a universal ant heap. and neither one sound right. Well, is there a way to existentialize the church? I'm going to tell you the question you should have in mind when you read the last chapter before the afterlog, the part about Lucius. What happens at Lucius Stone? Start on 722. Here are the questions you need to keep in mind. What is the church? Is there such a thing as immortality and eternity? What's the true meaning of being a Karamazov? And how does the third stage of Christianity send Marco's love out into the world so that the star will rise in the east? In one little chapter, Dostoevsky is going to answer all those questions. Try to read it with those questions in mind so we can work on it together next time. Yeah. You find out?
Well,
I can ask you what it's talking.
well, I just thought I'd